Hey everyone, it's still early December 2024. We're taking a nice ride now through Alabama, and I've never been through this area. Extremely rural. I think we're in the southwest part of the state. Very rural. Decent temperatures today, getting into the 50s. Last night we got down to about 30. I was actually sleeping in northern Florida, which actually got a decent frost. But this area, it still looks like, well, this area here looks like my area 2 months ago. This is what my area would look like. Slightly past peak, but all the color you're seeing here, the reddish color, is maple trees. They're a couple months behind my area. Even southern Florida, every now and then I'll notice a maple tree. I didn't think they grew that far south, but they do. And they'll drop their leaves and grow them right back a couple months later. Even in the areas of Florida that don't get frost at all, typically. Everywhere has got frost historically. Even the Florida Keys have had deep freezes. Their records are all in the mid-20s for temperature, but it's very rare. It's been many decades since the southern Florida's had a deep freeze like that, but it's possible. Up here, Alabama averages a couple inches of snow every year, but it's very scenic. I didn't know Alabama was so rural. When I think of Alabama, I think of all the farms, because that's the area I drove through last time. That's all I really have to go by. But this area here is really nice. Very rural. I haven't been through a town in a long time. Actually, coming up on the map, we're entering a small town. And I mean, very small town. It'll probably only take us 10 minutes to drive through it. Just drove by a little prison. It's very different being down here. I'm on my way up north, but instead of just going straight back, I'm right now driving through Mississippi, Arkansas, and then from there I'll go through, from Arkansas I'm going to go through Tennessee, and then what state's above Tennessee? Let me think without looking at anything. Kentucky, I think, is above it. I'm going to go through there, and then I'm going to make my way through Pennsylvania, make my way through upstate New York, through Vermont, through New Hampshire. That takes a bit longer. When I came down here, I went through Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, but I'd rather not go there because that's where all the traffic is. That's also the area if I want to stop overnight. Most of the Walmarts have ordinances or crime, so they won't let you sleep overnight. But if I go through Pennsylvania, upstate New York, it takes a little bit longer because there's no highways. But unless I'm have a specific destination I'm going to, I tend not to use highways, because these back roads like I'm using now, this is how you find interesting stuff. This is how you find new places. If you're on the highway, you're just going to blow by all kinds of things that you would be noticing on these back roads. This is a cool little, really old, small town. Looks nice, well upkept. Today we drove through a lot of small towns like this that are just crumbling to the ground, abandoned. But this area looks nice and well kept. Western Florida, on the Panhandle, Alabama, they have more abandoned buildings than I've ever seen before. Lots of cool pictures I was able to take with the Spanish moss, mildew-covered abandoned buildings. Because if you don't pressure wash down here, the buildings just tend to blend right in because of all the humidity. It makes things grow all over it, which is cool. Down here, bamboo seems to grow nice too. I've seen people use bamboo as fencing everywhere. I've thought about planting bamboo. There's certain kinds that grow up north. Down here, I've seen a few people have an entire yard, like they grew a forest of timber bamboo, which is cool. Timber bamboo, I looked it up recently. It doesn't grow in temperatures below 22 degrees. So that means it'll only grow in the southern states. It can withstand minor freezes a day or two at a time, being below freezing, which happens every now and then. But unfortunately, that wouldn't live in my area. What's cool about types of bamboo like that, it gets really hot down here, gets really humid. The south also has a lot of thunderstorms, almost on a daily, because of the warm weather unstabilizes the environment. But those perfect conditions, those types of bamboo can actually grow 3 feet a day, which is amazing. If they have water and heat, they grow fast, which is really cool. The fast growing ones don't grow up north. But there are some hardy types of bamboo, like from the mountains of China, that will grow up north. And they're not as super invasive like the Japanese knotweed. We have that up north. That's like a type of bamboo that starts from the ground every year. It's like a weed, but that's very invasive. It'll kill everything in the area. Bamboo is very dominant itself, but the types of bamboo I'm seeing around here, it's not like widespread around the whole area. It's just in one person's yard. It's a very hardy plant, but it's really cool. I see people using it as privacy fences down here all the time, and it doesn't seem to be invasive. It's really cool. Gas prices are pretty decent down here too. A lot cheaper than my area. Up north we're paying like $3.20. Down here everywhere is below $3. Today I saw the lowest gas price I've seen in a long time, $2.65. Unfortunately, I didn't need it. The last place I got gas was southern Florida. It was $2.84. But I've been seeing a range. I've seen it above $3 today, and I've seen it, what I just said, it's back and forth. I wonder what determines that. From town to town, it's rapidly changing. But I'm not going to complain. It's not like it was a couple years ago when gas made it up to like, what, almost $6? Gas prices are decent now, which is nice. Now we're about to get into a nice rural area again, some farms, a lot of woods. Looks like we're about to cross a major river, the Alabama River. Maybe 15 minutes out for that. That's going to be a little bit. It's hard to judge on the map how far away that actually is. It might be dark by then, but we're in a different time zone now, which is cool. Before today, I didn't realize Florida had 2 time zones, but it makes sense. I know people from Alabama, and they're a different time zone, so it makes sense that Florida, that's right below them, would be also a different zone. I'm going to be stopping in exactly 59 minutes. Made some cool videos today. I just got to sit and edit them once I get to where I'm sleeping. Today we visited Big Bend, Jai, which is an abandoned arena in Florida. It was really cool to see, and just massive stadium. It was well constructed, 35 years abandoned, no leaks in the roof. The drop ceiling looks perfect because there's no leaks. We even got up on the roof of this giant structure and was in almost perfect condition. There was a little bit of hurricane damage on the edges of it. Some of the walls of the building were a little bit damaged, but it's still very structural for decades to come. They actually recently wanted to make it into a casino, but that fell through, probably because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's still currently for sale, the building. And so it was abandoned in 1990. especially after Florida introduced the lottery. So a lot of people would go here to bet on games. We found those bet tickets all over the ground, entire room where you'd place bets. And yeah, it was a mess. I couldn't believe there was entire rooms just full of boxes of files just left around, files from the building. There was an escalator in there, 2 elevators. We actually got one of the elevator shaft doors to open. Usually the door is supposed to lock, so you can't open it when the elevator's not there, but we found one where that mechanism malfunctioned. I opened the elevator doors, looked down the shaft, saw the elevator down there, went downstairs, and amazingly it was open. We got to go inside the elevator, which wasn't too different. I thought it was going to be vintage, very vintage. It had the wood grain on the walls inside it. Most elevators these days are stainless steel, but nothing too unusual. I guess a lot of buildings I've been in recently have old elevators. I don't know what I expected. It's not an old building like it would have, the dial that points to what floor you're at. Nothing like that. But a very cool building to explore. Not as much vandalism as I thought would be there. It did have, yes, a lot of graffiti, but not as much as I actually expected. I am surprised no one robbed that building blind. It still had lockers, still had metal studs. It had a lot of stuff I'm surprised people didn't take out of there. Cooking appliances still were in the kitchen. Ooh, look at the gas price on that abandoned shop, $2.39. I remember when gas prices got down real low. I think during COVID, no one was driving and the gas stations were practically giving it away. They just, before it went bad, they were forced to just try to get rid of it. Cheapest gas price I have ever paid in my life, I think, was in 2020. It was $1.24 at a Big Y gas station in Chicopee, Massachusetts. That's the cheapest I ever paid, $1.24 a gallon. Very, very cheap. And I believe I actually got 20 cents off of that because I have the Big Y card. Maybe it was only 10 cents, but it was amazingly cheap. I filled my car up for like $20, maybe even $15, because that was my old car. It had a smaller tank. It was either 15 or $20, which is amazing, because now it costs like $60 to fill that car. This truck with these prices cost me about $150 if I'm completely empty, because I do have the double tank. This thing holds 55 gallons of gas. And I fill it for about $150 now. Somewhere around there with these prices. But I remember, like, if I drive to Canada, this truck is going to cost me $250 to fill. Yeah, they got all those environmental taxes up in California. I mean, I'm getting them confused because they're both the same. California and Canada both have the same giant gas tax, so you're going to pay twice as much if you're in those areas to fill up. And yeah, Canada and California, those are the places where you're going to pay a lot. Same with Oregon and Washington. Slightly better there, though. But yeah, I'll get back to what I was talking about, the Jai High. That was a really cool building, very easy to explore. You're only going to be there like an hour. We went through it really quickly. Brought the big lights. And I seen some other people's videos from like 8 years ago. I saw one by the Proper People, and their videos back then, they've also improved a lot. Their new exploring videos are like very professional these days. The one from 8 years ago wasn't as professional back then because it was 8 years ago. My videos were garbage if you look at what I was doing 5 years ago. But their video showed me a good amount of the building's layout, and what I liked about their video was it was a bat cave. I was hoping we'd see that. They saw thousands of bats in there, so they didn't go into the upper levels because of the bats. They were afraid of them because they were active. They weren't hibernating. I was hoping to see the bats because they typically only bite if they're rabid, which is still kind of rare. I wanted to see the bats, but when they explored, it was completely abandoned. I mean, completely dark. The building was pitch black inside the main room, the arena. But when I went there, I could have made my way around with no lights. Since the last hurricane, part of the wall got ripped open, and now lights just shining in there. I don't know if that scares bats away. I don't know if the bats migrated north and are hibernating now. I don't know what's up with those bats, but we didn't see a single one in there. It was pretty chilly this morning. I had frost once again when I woke up. There was frost on the truck. But then we went there early in the morning. On a Saturday, I can't believe I was the only person in there because that's a very popular place for urban exploring. Unfortunately, towards the end of that video, I heard a dog barking. And at first I was like, oh, is this a police dog coming to get me because they see my vehicle? Then I was like, oh no, this is definitely a stray, before I even saw it. Then when I came outside the building, I saw the dog. And knowing it was a stray, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if that dog was going to attack me or whatnot, but it didn't come near me. I just made my way to my truck to be safe. Then I pulled up near the dog with the truck where I knew it couldn't attack me. And the dog was acting strange. It was standing by a door, like guarding something as if. But I guess the dog had just been living in that room. I thought it was guarding maybe its homeless owner or its owner that was exploring in there. The dog was a little bit skinny, but not that skinny. So I tried calling it over to the truck. It wouldn't come over. I opened a can of sausage that I bought in Florida. Florida had a bunch of cool food I never tried before in their Mexican aisles of Walmart. And yeah, Florida has a lot of Mexican people, so they have a Mexican aisles in the Walmart. So there's all kinds of food I've never seen before in my life. So I bought a bunch of things to try them that I've never had before, and it was good. But I had this sausage that was from that aisle, and I was going to try it a different day, but I saw this dog, which was skinny, so I decided, no, I'm going to open it and give it to this dog. I threw it out the window, opened the can of sausage, threw it out the window. It was the kind of sausage that was packed in like lard. It had a lot of fat content with it, so it's like a survival food. I opened it, threw it out the window to the dog. Dog came over after a couple seconds of hesitation, started eating it, ate every single bite of it. And now that I gave it food, I was thinking, maybe the dog will be my friend. Got out of the truck. The dog was skittish. Like when I approached it, it ran away. It was like whimpering a little bit of growling as it backed off. Wasn't aggressive though. It was just like a stay away from me growl. The way it was acting, I think the dog was maybe abused by the owner who dumped it there. That was my opinion at that point. So that's what I did. I got out. I gave it a can of chicken noodle soup. I put it down for it, came over, it licked some of the broth, and the dog obviously couldn't get the stuff at the bottom of the can. I also didn't want it to get cut on the can, so I got close to the dog and took it away from him. Now, I've known dogs, especially ones that have been abused, or maybe ones that had competition with other dogs it lived with. This thing didn't even growl. It let me pick up the can of food. I've seen animals that'll get super vicious if you try to take away their food. Even people's pet dogs, you can't get near their food, you can't get near their bone. This dog was nice. It let me take the can of soup back. I dumped it on the pavement so it could lick it all up. I filled the can. I filled both of those cans with water to the brim. It drank all of it, a whole bottle of water. Filled them back up again and drank a little bit of that. This dog was starving and it needed water, in my opinion. So I couldn't just leave it there. So unfortunately, I have come across animals before in abandoned buildings. People like dumping them out in the middle of nowhere. There's just cruel people out there. This was a very nice dog. I don't know why they didn't bring it to a shelter, like a humane society where they don't kill it, where they would rehome it. It looks like a puppy, this dog, that you would have seen in that video. And yeah, it was sad. But because it was a puppy, I feel like it'll be rehomed pretty easily. Hopefully it gets picked up. I made a bunch of contacts about that dog. Too bad I'm not in a situation to be taking care of a dog. That was a very nice dog. So I called the local police non-emergency, and they gave me some numbers to some humane societies, which none of them picked up the phone because it was a Saturday. So I went to a bunch of humane societies, Facebook pages and stuff. I posted on 4 of their pages showing the exact location of the dog. I wrote, if you look up this Jai Big Bend building, it's on Google Maps, it's a tourist attraction, you'll find it easily. The dog's on the right side of the building, living in this room. Dog was also shivering a little bit. He was sitting in the sun, because I came back 10 minutes later to get pictures for the Humane Society for exactly where it is, so they could hopefully come pick this thing up. And when I came back, the dog came running over to the truck with its tail wagging. It was so excited to see me again. This is such a nice dog. I hope it gets picked up. But all I could do was report it to a whole bunch of organizations. It was a puppy, so probably would have pooped all over the truck if I tried bringing it in here. I don't know if it was well trained. All I know is the dog I used to have that I gave to my mother, because I'm traveling a lot. I can't really have a dog, so someday when I settle down I'll get one, but can't have it now. I gave my old dog to my mom, and that was a couple years ago. She loves that dog, so it has a good home now. It's better than it being in a crate for days at a time, or days at a time not being let outside at my house. That's no way for a dog to live, so I got rid of my old dog. But I'm just saying, that dog took me a while to train. I don't know if this dog would be trained, so I didn't try taking it or anything. It did go through my mind deeply taking this dog and maybe giving it to a family member, but I didn't know what to expect with this dog on the weeks I'm still on the road. But I did what I could to report it. I did what I thought was right with it. Gave it food and water. Hopefully it gets picked up in the next day or so. But after we were done with that building, after I reported it to a bunch of these Facebook pages, which Facebook I don't even use. I tried to make a presence on there a while back to fight the people that, there's outright people on there that pretend to be me, post my stuff. Didn't make a difference that I made an account. Facebook still wouldn't believe it's me, because these people outright pretend to be me. It cost a fortune, honestly, to fight fake people. You have to go to a website called DMCA, copyright. They'll charge you $200 to get rid of each fake account. So I only targeted one person, which had 1.6 million followers on Facebook pretending to be me. I used DMCA and I got their whole account just terminated. Because if Facebook won't do it, copyright company will do it, but it costs money. That's why I don't do it unless someone big is pretending to be me. That's why. But I had to reactivate my old Facebook that I haven't even looked at in many, many months. It's an old Facebook page I got for my post 10, but I don't use it anymore. I'm probably just going to terminate the whole thing. I'm a YouTuber. I'm not a Facebooker. I'll probably just terminate that whole account pretty soon, because no one watches that stuff on there. People like me for YouTube. They don't like me for Facebook, so I'm not even going to try to make a presence on there. It's more work than it's worth, in my opinion. I can't run all these random websites on my own. I'm just going to do what I do here with YouTube. So when we were done with that building, we drove about 40 minutes away. I think it was 40 minutes away, to another abandoned tourist attraction in Florida, which was pretty cool to see, but the history behind it was very sad. It's a place called the Dozier School for Boys. It's this large complex for boys that have done things wrong, some things very serious, like murder, rape, and then some minor stuff, which unfortunately they got thrown in the same school. Parents would throw them in there for skipping school, smoking a pack of cigarettes, stupid minor things. But this building operated from 1900 until 2011, when it was finally officially shut down. Looking at it under my own observations, parts of the building you could tell were super old, from the 1900s, which were abandoned. I could tell. Some of them looked like they'd been abandoned 50 years or something, I'm not sure. But we went inside some of them. They were super cool buildings, brick buildings. The brick parts were standing. The upstairs of the buildings was made out of wood timbers, completely rotted away to dirt. Just dirt. The timber parts of the buildings. So for it to completely disintegrate without a trace, I'm imagining it's like 50 years. Now down here, they don't have like half of the year frozen solid like I do, where it doesn't rot, it just pauses. Down here is very humid in the south, so I'm imagining things rot a lot faster. The south oftentimes will see 90% humidity for long portions of the summer, and that has got to rot things fast, along with termites down here, which termites don't exist where I live. We're above the termite line. We have carpenter ants. Down here they got carpenter ants too, but they don't have the termites up north. There's a lot of factors I was thinking about where these buildings could have been abandoned not as long as I might even imagine, because I'm not used to exploring things in the South. But it's colder weather right now in the South. The high temperatures in the 50s, below freezing at night. We have a better chance of not running into something dangerous like a venomous spider or a venomous coppermouth or a diamondback or a cottonmouth. All those things are less likely to encounter right now because it's cold, and that's why we are exploring. So that building had the really old buildings, and it also had the pretty modern buildings that were put up around, decommissioned in 2011. They were in pretty good shape. On the front of it, it had a big, the front doors of the building had a shield like the police have, or the sheriff's star. That's what was on the front of the building, the sheriff's star. And guess what? This was actually pretty cool. I was walking through all these buildings, some of them recently abandoned, some of them abandoned a long time ago. Not a single piece of graffiti. All the vandalism was done by Mother Nature and the hurricanes. Some of the roofs were torn off, but it was all hurricane damage. Not a speck of graffiti. There was maybe one broken toilet, but everything was intact. You never explore abandoned buildings with intact toilets, walls that aren't smashed. And you know why that is? These buildings are open to the public, as far as I know, so people can see where these boys lived and the gruesome things that happened to them that we'll get into in a minute. So these places are open to the public as a reminder from the past, and a reminder to make sure this stuff never happens again, and make sure the government never turns a blind eye to this type of stuff again. A lot of the buildings are wide open. In fact, some of the abandoned buildings right next to the memorial for these boys that died, the doors are strung open with ropes. They're wide open so you can go into the cafeteria. Some of the newer buildings, they're wide open to the public. Some of them are in the woods, completely overgrown with vines, but this time of year, the vines actually looked like they had just been hit by frost this week, just died off. That's a shame. They would have made great pictures, these vine-covered buildings. They look like grapevines, but maybe it's that kudzu plant, which is very invasive in the South. It might have been that plant that can grow like a foot or two a day. Maybe it was that. I don't know. But there was a lot of buildings that were covered in vines that we made our way into, stacked to the ceiling with desks, chairs, typewriters, old analog TVs, children's toys, a bunch of balls and plastic bowling pins. It looked like a gym teacher's closet. There was also slides, playscapes, which would make me think a lot younger children were staying at this place. But supposedly it's older kids in their teens that were juvenile delinquents and stuff, they would call them. But not a speck of graffiti, because the current Florida Sheriff's Department is in the center of the complex. It's on the grounds, because I think that they're the ones who actually used to run this place. But because they still exist on the grounds, all the vandalism people are scared of it. They're afraid. And there's also cameras looking at all these abandoned buildings. And we went in there, explored them all. The police never questioned me one bit. Explored them all. I drove my vehicle right through the complex, parked in front of all these buildings, went inside, explored these crumbling buildings, took pictures for hours. Police never said a thing. And the sheriff's station looked more like a prison. That's what it says on Google, it's the sheriff's station. But it had barbed wire around it. And also on the same property, it looked like there was an active prison. Guard towers, razor wire. We were driving not more than 50 feet from the gate of that prison, right next to the razor wire. Never got questioned one bit. But you better believe we were definitely on those cameras. We were probably being watched the whole time by somebody. But they didn't care, because it appears the whole thing's open to the public. There's plaques, memorials, the cemetery for these boys. I've seen older people's videos of this place, and they were unmarked graves that were marked by nothing more than a white painted rock. But now there's actually markers that say unidentified grave, because they use ground penetrating radar. Now they're marked, and there's also a giant plaque with all the names of the ones they were able to identify by exhuming graves using family members' DNA and stuff. Just by bones, they were able to identify a ton of them. They used ground-penetrating radar because a number of these people weren't even buried in the cemetery. They were randomly buried in mass graves and stuff. So a lot of the boys were beat to death in that camp, murdered. Lots of bad things we probably don't even know about happened to them. There's a building there called the White Shack. I don't know if it was the one in the memorial or this one that was dilapidated where all the gym teachers stuff it looked like. But it was one of those two small white buildings that the kids would have to line up and get smacked by belts until they bled, and if they made even a single peep, they'd get beat even more. And they were getting beat for minor things that they would have done in there. Even if they just spoke at a line once, that they would have this stuff happen to them. Torture, which sometimes even killed them. That's why there were so many graves. The place also had a massive garbage incinerator where they suspect bodies may have been burned and covered up, because a bunch of parents of these boys would call in wondering what happened, how come my son stopped writing letters, and they would turn a blind eye, not respond, or say the boy couldn't be relocated, or just say the person ran away when in fact they were actually murdered by the school. Kids that tried to escape would be shot at by the school. Very bad things happened there, and it's amazing that it went on until 2011. Even in the 1950s, the Florida governor back then visited the school, went through the school for a tour, and he saw the abuse. He saw that the roofs were starting to leak. He also saw the heating systems were not working in freezing weather. A lot of abuse going on. And that governor, I guess, didn't do anything. He said he was going to do stuff. He said the school needed reform, but it never happened. The abuse went on for another 60 years until being officially shut down. And now Florida's trying to make up for it. That's why they leave this place open as a reminder. They leave it crumbling as a reminder of what happened there. You can still walk the grounds. There's not a single no trespassing sign. You can look around these buildings, look at the memorial. So they have all these horrible buildings just wide open. The doors are unlocked. But bring a flashlight. Now, the ones that are next to the sheriff's department, the newer buildings, these are some of the cleanest abandoned buildings I've ever seen. There's no debris or anything in them. They're just completely empty so you can walk them. Tons, like hundreds of pigeons living in one of them. Lots of poops. But then there's these other buildings that are hoarding desks, chairs, pianos. You can't even walk through the front door of some of them. But those hordes of chairs stacked to the ceiling did make for some good pictures. That was an interesting place. I plan on editing that tonight when I stop. We got another 40 minutes on the road. But first, I'm going to edit the Big Jive video. That'll be a pretty easy one to edit. Probably only take me an hour to put it together. But this other video, for reasons, it might take me like 3-4 hours to go through it, because I remember certain things I wanted to edit, do special effects showing before and afters, because we went in a building that was so destroyed. And we also went in one that was identical, that was in nearly perfect condition. And it's all because the one that was in the woods had moisture all the time, didn't get sunlight, it was just sitting there rotting all the time. While the one in the sun got saved by decades worth of damage, it looked like. Or maybe they just used one of them a lot longer, I'm not really sure. But it's cool. One building is completely destroyed. You could see cast iron sinks and toilets attached to the concrete wall in the middle of the woods, because the entire roof structure was wood. It just rotted away, collapsed, rotted down to dirt. You can't even tell. But then a new building, the roof was still intact with the same toilet sink setup. And the shower heads were also on the ceiling, which I've never seen before. So prisoners couldn't, I guess, smash it or whatever. Very strong buildings. Down here, they do get freeze and thaw cycles very briefly. And I think that's what saved the building. If these buildings were in my area, freeze and thaw cycles months on end, deep freezing, frost heaving, these buildings I think would have been in worse shape as far as the brick buildings. As far as the wooden buildings, I think they'd be better shape up north. We don't have the humidity. Half the year is frozen solid. It's like a pause with decomposure. That place also had a bunch of walk-in freezers. In the woods, they had a pile dozens, maybe hundreds of grill tanks. But I looked closer, they weren't grill tanks, they were refrigerant tanks. They had some pretty leaky refrigerating systems at this place. The big walk-in freezers were pretty leaky. Oh, they also had 2 abandoned churches. One was in great condition. Looks like it's been being maintained by the sheriff's department. And there was one that was abandoned, had holes in the roof. Hurricane hit it. Couldn't even walk in the church. The pews were all still in there, but it was stacked with chairs, desks, random stuff. We were able to walk up inside the steeple area to the 2nd floor and look out over the area. Able to walk in through a few other doors briefly, but you can't really walk down the aisle of the church. It was just a hoard. They were using it as storage. And these were vintage chairs, vintage desks, things from like the 40s, 50s, maybe even 30s, old stuff. And it was in fairly good shape, a little bit of rust. I'm sure a lot of collectors would like to restore that stuff. I hope that stuff gets auctioned off if they ever tear that place down. I really do. I hate things, being there and seeing things go to waste. Even some of the buildings, they don't build things like they used to. These are strong buildings. I even made a comment in that video that one of these buildings, even though it's commercial, it's got sinks, it's got kitchens, maybe it was the living quarters for the employees, because this is rural. They probably lived on site, especially 100 years ago. I can't imagine how rural that would have been before automobiles were big. Back when this place opened, everyone was probably on horses, so yeah, of course everyone lived there. It was much, much more rural than it was today, and it's still rural now. But these buildings were commercial, but they were housing. And I love seeing things that are commercial, because commercial in my eyes is heavy duty, built to last. I would love to live in a place like that. These were smaller buildings, probably less than 3,000 square feet. And the part that was intact on all of them was probably 1,500 square feet. Maybe that's even being generous. They were nice. I admire the architecture of older buildings, even older commercial buildings. They don't build things like they used to. Even the building near the sheriff's department that had I think it was the visitor center, or maybe the main prison, I don't even know, but it had like bulletproof glass with these slots where you can put things underneath the glass, like paperwork back and forth to the guards. It's like a check-in area, I imagine, for visitors. But that building, the roof completely blew off in a hurricane, the pitched metal roof. But underneath it was reinforced concrete. Maybe the roof was designed to blow away and be able to be rebuilt really easily after a hurricane, maybe. But the reinforced concrete underneath it, the ceiling of the building, wasn't leaking. It had stalactites, so I guess it was technically leaking a little bit, but what the heck is this? What the heck is this? There's a tree on fire. Did that is that a controlled burn? Someone there on an ATV sees it. Did that get struck by lightning? Wow. That might have got struck by lightning right there. Look at that whole tree was on fire, and the whole field was on fire. Maybe it was a controlled burn that just went up into the tree. I know farmers sometimes will burn their fields, but I don't know what that was. That was cool though. The guy on an ATV who probably lives there, he's on it, he's looking at it, so I'm sure the fire department's on their way, or that guy's just gonna let it burn out, I don't know. But he has a cool night ahead of him watching that tree burn. Yeah, back to the building, and it deteriorated. Those were cool buildings, and it had stalactites, so yes, I guess I have to say it was technically seeping through the concrete, leaking. But very little damage in there, very little damage. Buildings down here for hurricanes and stuff, they're built to last. Everyone's house you see me driving by right now, the majority of these are built out of cinder blocks or concrete, and then you put walls and sheetrock on the inside of them. These houses are strong in the South. Very strong buildings to put up with hurricanes. Maybe right now, some of them are becoming more and more timber built widespread, because we're driving north right now away from the coast. Like, we're now in the middle of Alabama, which I guess hurricane winds wouldn't be as strong. You have a lot of trees and land to slow it down at this point, but they still do get hit by some stuff. There's lots of abandoned buildings still, and a lot of like store signs, especially in southern Alabama. Now it's less and less. Like, see this Dollar General sign? Down in the south, many store signs like this, which are flimsy plastic and hollow, were blown out, smashed. Because I know southern Alabama, the panhandle of Florida, they've been hit by a couple hurricanes in the past few years, bad ones. And after the hurricanes, I always want to come down and see the flooding and stuff. But I know I wouldn't be able to help with the culverts and stuff, because that's a job for an excavator in the south, especially after hurricane force debris flows. You're not removing that by hand. But on top of that, in my trip to Florida, almost every culvert pipe I looked inside had an alligator living in it. So that's another reason. Don't go near the Florida culverts, or the southern Alabama culverts, or the Georgia culverts. And I heard that alligators live all the way up into places like Arkansas, northern Mississippi. They have quite the range. When I researched that, they go as far as Texas, up into the Carolinas. Alligators have a range, and they supposedly don't hibernate. So I wonder what they do when areas like this get a few weeks or even snow or a deep freeze. Well, I do know what they do. I'm just surprised they live that far up. So I actually saw a video, I'm now remembering, on the news, a deep freeze a couple years ago that like the South had. And the alligator just kind of shuts its body down into a suspended state, slows its heart rate down, kind of like hibernation, but supposedly they don't hibernate. It kept its snout above the water and allowed the pond to freeze around its snout slightly. And the freeze, I think, only lasted like a week, but the alligator survived it in that way. I also researched, because we still see palm trees here in the middle of Alabama every now and then. And I did look up, there are types of palm trees. So palm trees, the outards of the tree will actually die, the innards of the tree will survive, and the outards of the tree, once they die, it becomes more resilient, the thicker bark, to future frost. And there's some Asian types of, like Chinese, I believe, when I looked up, palm trees that you can purchase around here that are more hardy. They can survive temperatures down to 10 degrees, I heard, which is amazing. These Chinese palm trees. So, the South has a lot of things I'm not used to. I've been doing a lot of research about their plants and animals, what to watch out for, like the snakes, what kind of snakes I have to watch out for. I learned that things like cottonmouths stand their ground, and I've witnessed that in person a couple of times. It's a snake, it'll just hiss at you, but it will not move. It's unlikely to bite you, but the thing is, you can step on it if it's in the overgrowth. It won't move, it stands its ground, and it'll just sit there and let you walk up to it and snap at you. At least the rattlesnakes will oftentimes try to slither away before it even comes in contact with you. Also, I did a lot of alligator research. The park rangers in the Everglades when I was camping gave me a lot of advice. So now I won't be as afraid if I ever camp with alligators again. But I was afraid one night camping in the Everglades. I didn't realize that this is normal behavior. The alligators I know are active at night, but I heard one get out of the water because I was camping. This campsite had water all around it. I heard something big get out of the water. You could even hear it dripping because it was so quiet. Then at 1 a.m, I woke up to a loud growling sound outside my tent. It was an alligator growling at the tent. And I was scared. Is this thing going to break in? Is this thing going to eat me or something? Because I don't know much about alligators. But I was fine. It went away after I yelled a bunch. Well, it didn't go away from yelling. It just stopped growling and sat there for another hour. Then it started up again with growling. Then it ran away. So, the park rangers told me your tent is new. Alligators have a great sense of smell. They can probably smell what I was eating in there. And the tent is something new in their territory, so they'll come over and they'll investigate. But they've never had a case of it breaking in. They told me me I don't have anything to worry about. Growling by alligators is normal when they see something in their territory. But they're very afraid of humans, the ones that are wild. When I was out there in the Everglades, the ones that aren't used to the tourists taking pictures, like the ones that you have to hike 6 hours deep into the Everglades to see, those alligators run into the water before you even spot them. You just hear a big splash. But then the ones that are near the tourists who get their picture taken by hundreds of people every day, they'll just sit there, they're chill. They're not afraid of people anymore. But the ones out there are very afraid of people. But they're not afraid of a tent. They're just smelling something that they probably look at as a big rock. I don't think they see my tent as living, so they didn't try to go after it. But then I come across a video online of someone sleeping in the Everglades. And I came across this video that has no explanation at all. If you look up alligators breaking into a tent on YouTube, you're probably going to find this video of someone camping in the Everglades surrounded by like a half a dozen alligators all outside the tent at once. And the video's not very clear in my eyes. I don't know if the alligators started breaking in or if the person saw them and was afraid and ripped their way out the other side of the tent. I don't know. The alligators look confused and kind of chill in that video. They were just exploring. But the video ends very abruptly. They got out. They were okay. But the video, I feel like it should have went on a little more. But I saw that video because I started researching once I heard distinct growling. And there's really no research. There's nothing out there that talks about what I was looking to find. But the park rangers told me that. And I always wear my big high boots when I'm out in the middle of nowhere in the south, just in case I come across something like a cottonmouth. Hopefully it can't bite through my heavy waders, which have cloth inside and outside to be puncture proof, rip resistant. I'm hoping that would help me, because I found out they can only strike 3 feet. So I don't think they'd be able to strike as high as my arms. I think they'd probably go after my boot, and I'd be okay. Anti-venom cost a lot, so I don't even want to know what the hospital bill would be if I got out of that alive. I also looked at anti-venom. They sell it online for specific snakes, or a universal one that's supposed to save you for all the common snakes in the south. Guess what it cost? $10,000 on Amazon. If you are like someone that always is in the Everglades doing stupid stuff, you might want to have that in your truck, but it has a shelf life of I think a year or 2. Wow, you're probably not even going to use it, but for that peace of mind, that's super expensive. I'm not going to buy something like that. I'm just going to be as cautious as possible going in these places. And I'm not in the south often, and when I am down here, it's cold intentionally to hopefully not encounter these things. Although when I was in the Everglades, I drove around in the middle of the night once because the rangers told me the snakes like to go on the edge of the road because it's cold at night and the road is still hot from the daytime heat. Drove around in the Everglades. All I saw was 2 water snakes and a bunch of alligators. Didn't see anything venomous. But that was the time I was hoping to photograph venomous things from a distance. I'd walk out in the road and take pictures of them close, but definitely not within striking range. But I unfortunately didn't see any. I think it was still too cold. One of those nights in the Everglades was 40 degrees and I was freezing my butt off in the tent because I didn't expect it to get that cold. Then I researched that, I think I already said in this video, the Everglades once got down to 24 degrees and even the Florida Keys had a hard freeze in 1977. That was their bad one. They haven't had anything like that since. But yeah, if I'm ever in Florida for whatever reason in the summer, which I don't want to be, I'm cheap and it's a waste of time, so I don't buy hotels often. Every now and then just as a place to clean up, maybe every week or so, but I tend to go to truck stops and stuff. I have a nice, comfortable bed in the back of my truck. It fits a queen-size mattress, and maybe it's a full-size mattress, I don't remember. Probably full. I have a nice, comfy bed in the back of my truck. It's perfect as long as the weather's decent. But if it was summertime, I wouldn't be able to sleep in here. So I would have to get hotels. So that's why I don't go to the south in the summer when I'm exploring. And also, if I'm in a hotel, I feel obligated to stay there until checkout time because I paid for it. when I'm traveling like this, I want to be up and moving again at the crack of dawn. Every moment of daylight is precious when you're out exploring and photographing things. But if I am ever in the south, in the middle of the summer, for whatever reason, and the only reason I can see is maybe if family members wanted to go to the beach or something nice and hot for the ocean. That's the only reason I can see myself ever going to Florida in the summer. Very humid too. I wouldn't be sleeping in the truck. I had a few miserable nights even in December sleeping in the truck. They're not as common, but we did have a 90% humidity night when I was camping. I didn't sleep very well. But it's rare. Weather's very nice in Florida this time of year. I had a few days it got to 86, was the hottest I saw in Florida. But mix it with the humidity, it's bad. I wouldn't want to be down here when it's like 90 or 100 degrees every single day, unless I'm going to the beach. That'd probably be kind of cool. It would also be kind of cool to go to the Everglades in the middle of the summer, because that's when all the snakes come out. If you saw that video I made where I was camping in the Everglades by kayak, I was going through mangrove trees, which probably would have had cool snakes if it was really hot out. But it was cold. That was a cold day. That's why I chose it, so I wouldn't be sweating my butt off in a kayak all day. The weather was very nice, actually, in the day. It's just a little chilly at night. But yeah, someday maybe I'll go to Florida in the summer. I can't say I won't. I have interest in it just to see specific animals that don't like coming out this time of year. It would also be cool to go to the beach. But I heard Florida's very packed in the summer. It's also packed in the winter, February, March, because everyone's avoiding winter. But this is like the off-season. Florida was empty. The Everglades was empty in November, early December, like it is now. It was empty. I did hiking trails for 6 hours out, 6 hours back, 2 different trails. Didn't see a single soul. I was even told I was the first person of 2024 to get that camping permit because everyone was afraid of the trail being flooded. I just wore waders. It was a salt marsh, and crocodiles aren't that common, so I wasn't worried. Then the second trail I did had alligators everywhere, but they were afraid. They were all avoiding me in the water. Only 4 people pulled permits for that trail, the rangers told me. Then the trail I did with the kayaks, which was Hell's Bay Trail. People do it like once a week this off season. Not too many people. Summertime, people use that almost every day. That's a pretty common trail. People love that trail. But those are all wilderness campsites, which I found absolutely amazing. Definitely recommend if you're in Florida and you're up to a day-long hike, do those. The one with the alligators was scary. Maybe only stay out there one night. But the other hikes I did, if I ever do them again, or do them with someone, I'm gonna stay out there for at least a couple nights. The first hike I did, which was 6 hours through ankle and knee-deep water, it was so strenuous, I probably should have stayed out there 2 days so I could have a little more recovery, because I was super, super sore. Same with the kayak. I still feel that in my shoulders, rowing a kayak 3 hours in, 3 hours out with no breaks. That was a long paddle. That was the most I ever used a kayak. That was cool. What else do we got to talk about? Well, as a northerner, it's very odd seeing Christmas decorations everywhere with no snow on the ground and leaves on the trees. My house right now, I look through my doorbell camera. I got a foot of snow waiting for me. I gotta fire up the snowblower when I get back up there. I'll be back up there in a week or so, maybe 2 weeks. My goal is to be back up there to spend time with family for Christmas. And even my grandpa, who was down here in the hospital, that's why I came down here, that's why I did this trip. He wasn't doing very good when I came down. He wasn't eating very well. Kept bringing him all his favorite foods. Even if he ate a couple bites, it was something, because he refused to eat the hospital food. They gave him THC pills that don't make him high, but, marijuana will give you the munchies, and it worked. That medication they gave him made him start eating, and I feel like that's what led to his recovery, because the hospital was amazed that he was able to walk out of there. He was in serious condition after brain surgery and not eating for a week straight, being 87 years old. But he made it out of it. He's strong. He'll be driving again soon after a slight license suspension because of the surgery. But he's back to normal. He had a week. I was so worried because he wasn't eating. He was acting like he had severe dementia or Alzheimer's. He knew everything from the past, but the last couple weeks, short term, was like deleted from him. But now that he started eating, everything bounced back. He was fully back to normal. A little weak, but he's still eating strong. Brought him food almost every day. I was down in Florida. His favorite things are Wendy's, IHOP, Dunkin' Donuts. I kept bringing him high-calorie breakfast foods and stuff because he wouldn't eat the hospital food. But once he bounced back and he was in a better state of mind, he started eating the hospital food and he got out. They sent him home with a walker. Doesn't need it anymore. He's back on his feet, walking around uneven terrain, picking up garbage that fell out of my car when I opened the door. He started picking it up. He's all strong and back to normal again. I'm so glad. My grandpa works for the National Forest Service up north, and hopefully he'll be right back to his job in the spring. It's a seasonal job he does to keep himself busy. He's had a lot of cool jobs. He used to test jet engines for the military. He was a truck driver after retirement for years, up until age 80, I think, or maybe 82, when they made him retire. Then he got the job at the National Forest Service. He's always doing something to keep himself busy, and that's why he's so strong at his age. He was still climbing mountains a couple years ago, like Mount Washington in his 80s. I'm so glad he's back to normal. That's why I was in Florida. But as he did, once I was down here 2 weeks, I saw him doing a lot better. So I disappeared for a few days, did a couple of my own things while I was down here. Every couple of days, commuting back to his area and checking in on him. And he's heading up north too before Christmas. He's not driving, but he's gonna head back up north soon. So that's all good. Good news for him. Maybe we'll have some bunch more good years with him. But I had to come down here when I found out he was in serious condition. Because I didn't know that could have been the last time I ever seen him. So I made sure every day to bring him all his favorite foods. Even though he wasn't eating 90% of them, I gave him a lot of options, because a couple bites of food is better than nothing if you're not eating, especially when you're old, you lose weight fast, and it's hard to build it back. Must have brought him dozens of protein shakes. One of the nurses said that, hey, it looks like you have a little grocery store going on in here. You also love raspberries and stuff. Brought him Chinese food in there. I love that fast food chain that's in the south. I've never seen it up north. Long John Silver's. $7, you get a whole seafood platter. He loved that in the hospital too. Left him with a bunch of protein shakes just yesterday when I left for the final time. He loves the protein shakes, especially these high-calorie ones. It's like a milkshake I found in the Mexican aisle at Walmart. They're delicious. I have a bunch here too. I also found, which is great for camping, I wish they sold them up north, the Mexican aisle had shelf-stable yogurt, and on top of it has like cookies or M&Ms, and you can mix it in with it. But shelf-stable yogurt, that's cool. I bought a bunch of them. I always love looking in the international foods aisles, because we don't have that up north. Well, we do, but it's like one bay of the aisle. Here, they have multiple aisles. They have an entire Asian aisle, entire Hispanic aisle. It's cool. I love trying new foods. I was raised to try every single food at least once before you say you don't like it. I bought these olives the other day. I love eating olives out of the can, just one after another, just eating them with a fork. Bought olives in the Mexican aisle, and I should have known it was going to be spicy. I thought they were regular olives, and I'm here eating them in the dark car while I'm driving, and my mouth is suddenly on fire. They're hot pepper stuffed. But they were good. I bought a couple more cans before I left Florida, and I already ate one of those cans. I've been on a diet. I've been eating a lot of berries and stuff, and doing a lot of hiking in Florida really helped me get back into shape. I was 212 pounds, which isn't severely overweight, but it's a little overweight. I didn't like that. I'm supposed to be at 180 for my height. I'm already back down to 190. I lost about 20 pounds or so while I was in Florida. Just eating healthy, eating smaller portions, keeping active. I eat high protein lately for breakfast. It gives me energy for my day, and at night, when you retain fat, I'm not eating high calorie before bed. I'm eating a box of raspberries or blackberries, olives, maybe a can of carrots or corn. Healthy things. Maybe beef jerky. Nothing too fattening. And I lost weight fast. I'd say another month or so I can maybe get back to my goal of 180. Maybe even lower. But yeah, I lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks. Just by eating healthy and being very, very active and having control. Today I went to this really cool store that sells alligator stuff. It sells different flags, different knickknacks, ice cream, a bunch of Amish food. I bought Amish soap too, a couple packs of it to give it to people for Christmas. It was really cheap too, this natural soaps. I also bought a bunch of Amish canned food. I bought peanut butter today, the old-fashioned kind of peanut butter where you have to stir it because the oils separate. I don't think I've ever tried that before. It's the healthier kind. I also bought pickled pork chops, raw, a bunch of odd food that I've never tried before because I'm curious. I love trying new foods. Yeah, got a whole bunch of alligator jerky I'm going to give to people for Christmas. Yeah, Florida actually has farms. They eat farm alligators. They're not wild caught. Unless you, well, they do have people on the side of the road that sell game meat. Unfortunately, I didn't stop at that. I only saw one on the way in, which I wasn't interested in stopping. I was rushing to Florida, but on the way out, I didn't see anything. I wish I came across one. Maybe I'll come across one in Alabama, someone selling game meat. I don't know, but got some alligator beef jerky, which is cool. It's different. I like trying different foods. And I also, because I've never tried it in my life, I bought honeycomb. But that's very sugary. I don't think I can finish it, so I'm going to wait until I get home and share it with someone. So I also bought, you ever see the rainbow colored popcorn, which is very sugary? It's delicious. I bought some of that today. It wasn't what I expected. Every color of the rainbow was actually a different color. The popcorn. And because I've been on a very healthy diet, my body's like, hey, stop eating this sugary stuff. I couldn't even eat a fraction of what I used to be able to eat. My body's not used to sugar after being completely healthy for a few weeks. I also bought a little bit of fudge that looked delicious at that roadside store, and ate a few pieces. I just can't finish it. My body is rejecting sugar. My body is just on eating healthy right now. It made me feel sick suddenly having a rush of sugar after a couple weeks of not having stuff like that. Gotta shut I was just transferring gasoline from my second tank up to my original tank. With the second tank, on my way to Florida, I drove over 12 hours nonstop with that second tank, when typically I'd have to stop on the highway every 4-6 hours for gas. That second tank is a lifesaver. It fills up my original tank 1.5 more times. On my way to Florida, I realized the transfer pump on my truck is malfunctioning. I pushed it on my way down to Florida. It didn't do anything. I got out, it was making a weird humming sound like the transfer pump was stuck. Well, bummer. I'm gonna have to fix it. The pump is cheap. I just don't know how hard it's gonna be getting to it. It's not in the tank, it's outside the tank. But A couple days later, I push the button. It fills me back up. A day later, it works again. A day later, it does not work. A day later, it works. Today, it worked. It's unreliable now. I'm replacing that pump when I get back to my area. I'm going to bring it to a mechanic who I trust. Finally found a mechanic I trust after years of Toyota dealers ripping me off and overcharging me. I finally found someone that I trust. Me and my grandpa have been going to him for a couple years. He's trustworthy. There's very little things that the Toyota dealer's cheaper for. Like, you have to bring the truck to the dealer for transmission fluid because he just doesn't have a way of measuring it out, he said. You need a specialized machine to do that stuff. And my truck requires transmission fluid at 50,000 miles. My truck just hit 62,000 miles. Now, the mechanic I go to, he recommends I change my motor oil every 3,000 miles, but I'm not going to do that. I drive so often. I'd be going, especially on a trip like this, I'd be going to getting an oil change every week. I'm not going to do that. But when I'm in my area, when I'm not traveling, I tend to change my oil every 5,000 or 6,000 miles. Toyota manual says if you're doing a lot of traveling like I currently am, lots of highways, lots of fast driving, not stop and go like in the city. I'm not doing off-road driving too much right now. If you're in the city, if you're doing off-road driving, 5,000 miles max. If you're all off-road, doing excessive idling and stuff to run strobe lights, run equipment like I do sometimes, then I'm going to have to bring it into the shop at 3,000 miles for excessive idling, which it says to do in the manual. It says if you're a delivery driver, any weird thing like that where you're probably excessively idling, 3,000 miles. But my truck says I can stretch it to 10,000 miles if I'm constantly on the highway, which I'm going to stretch it to this time, 10,000 miles, just so I can get back to my area and do my own oil change in my driveway. So a lot of times for convenience, I don't change my own oil, but I'm going to do it this time. I don't even think we'll get to 10,000 miles, but we'll get close to the maximum oil change that Toyota recommends. My mechanic disagrees. He says don't do that. But the only reason I'm going to do it is because it's inconvenient getting an oil change right now. And I'm not going to bring it to a place like Jiffy Lube or some place like that. I've known multiple people where Jiffy Lube has destroyed their cars. They don't change the filters, or they'll break the dipstick off inside the engine. Now, not everyone there is an idiot, but a lot of them are. They've done things. They broke off dipsticks, and they've also ruined the threads on the oil plug of my mom's car. Yeah, Jiffy Lube. That's what you get for a 10-minute oil change, or any place that advertises something like that. Don't go to them. But my truck actually still has a few free oil changes with Toyota I've just never used. And I better use them up. Just, I don't like going to Toyota once I found out that they stripped the oil plug on my old car and I had to replace the oil pan. But my old car has 370,000 miles on it. Original engine, original transmission. There's no ticking noises, no issues of the lifters or the camshaft, things that typically make noises. It shifts perfectly because I've changed a transmission fluid every 50,000 miles since I've owned it. I bought it at 90,000 miles. My old car is running perfect, and until recently, it went 10,000 miles every single time for an oil change. And it's still lasting with all those miles. So no, I'm not worried about this car's engine. Although this truck has a very old-fashioned engine. So I'm not going to always do this. Just saying. Typically, I'll go 5,000 to 6,000 miles. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. I'm on a trip now. I'm driving like 500 miles a day. So yeah, I'm putting the miles on fast. So I don't think there's an issue with what I'm doing. I wish vehicles had an extended oil pan option. And what I mean by that is, like, my oil pan in this is pretty high up. So why can't I buy an oil pan that's twice as deep? What I mean by that is semi-trucks can go sometimes 20,000 miles, 30,000 miles without an oil change. They're always on the road, so they make sure that they have massive oil reservoirs compared to their engine. The engine has a lot of oil for its size, and that's because they're always on the road. It allows the truck to go 2 or 3 times as far before that oil gets dirty. At least that's what I've been told by people that drive tractor trailers. You can tell me in the comments that's wrong, but that's what I've been told. And if that's true, they should give vehicles the option of a bigger oil reservoir. I'd buy one, just because I drive often enough that I get an oil change at least every other month. But enough chatter. Oh, wow. Walmart's coming up in 8 minutes. We're getting close. What's that big lit up thing in the sky? Wow, I talked for a whole 71 minutes. Yeah, I think I'm going to end the video here, but I hope today's chatter was interesting. Thanks for watching, and have an awesome day. This was a good conversation. Thank you for being here.